I want to talk about some of the things that you and I may want to consider if we're entertaining the idea of going back to our homeland someday. Now, the things that I'm going to explore in this video are things that are long term. You can't just wake up tomorrow and say, okay, I'm going to do A, B, C, D, tick this off my list, and off I go. These are things that will take time, hence the need to discuss them now. We need to be planning now if that is something that we want to do in the future. Now, I know that there are those immigrants or other people who have relocated. Maybe they've come to the UK, United States, Canada, Australia, and they've decided, you know what, I'm happy here. I want to stay here for the rest of my life. I want to stay here forever. I no longer want to go back to my homeland. And that is fine. And I'm also aware that there are all kinds of arrangements, different arrangements, when it comes to the idea of going back home or spending time in your homeland. People have made all kinds of arrangements. There are those who have set up their life in such a way that they spend 6 months here and another 6 months there, meaning that I can decide, okay, I want to spend 6 months in the United Kingdom and another 6 months in Zimbabwe. So I know that there are all kinds of arrangements when it comes to satisfying oneself, feeling content, feeling happy that this is how I want to live my life. Now, in this video, as I said, I want to talk about some of the measures that we may want to put in place to facilitate that process. Now, my first suggestion when it comes to the idea of going back home is to do with preparation. I mean, we've already touched on this, but now I'm talking preparation in terms of asking yourself, what kind of arrangement is suitable for you? How do you want to live your life when the time comes? What sort of lifestyle are you going for? I've already mentioned that some people decide that, okay, I want to spend 6 months in the UK, 6 months in Zimbabwe. Now, there are all kinds of things or all kinds of implications when it comes to that, because if you're going to be living in two countries, then there are certain things that you may want to consider. If you're still working, one thing you may want to consider is to do with tax. So if you're going to be working and living in both countries, you may want to find out what your position is going to be in terms of taxes. Are you going to be required to pay tax in Zimbabwe or in the United Kingdom? How does it work? This is something to consider, something to look at, find out what are the rules and regulations when it comes to things like that. Now, this video is not about giving you advice, tax advice, that is. That's not what this video is about. Rather, it's about giving you ideas, advice on what kind of things to think about, what kind of things to prepare for. You know, those obligations that we must fulfill as human beings, official obligations. Another thing as well you may want to consider in terms of preparation is to do with your living arrangements. We've already established, I'm giving an example. Let's just move with that example. I will talk about another example in a minute, but let's just walk through the 6 months here, 6 months there. If you're going to spend half a time there, half a time there during the year, do you have a home in Zimbabwe and do you have a home in the United Kingdom? And let's say we tick that box, because I would like to think that will be the case. So if that is the case, how are you going to maintain the two homes? If you own your own home in the United Kingdom, let's say you've got a mortgage or maybe you've paid it off, are you going to put tenants in your home? And during the time that you're going to spend in the United Kingdom, what arrangements are you making in terms of the occupation of your home in Zimbabwe? Is it just going to be vacant? Are you going to put someone there to look after your home? What sort of arrangements are you going to make? So really it's about the logistics of how things are going to work. And if you are to leave your home in the United Kingdom, let's say you're not going to leave it with someone, or nobody's going to be occupying that house in the United Kingdom or that house in Zimbabwe, how safe is that for you? Do you have guarantee that your home or your house in the UK is going to be safe, is going to be okay during your absence? Or are you going to find a house sitter? What about the home in Zimbabwe? Who is going to look after it? Is it going to be safe if you're not going to put anyone there. So these are some of the logistics to consider. So yeah, just brainstorming things in terms of preparation. And also, if you decide to spend 6 months here, 6 months there, are you going to be able to afford that kind of lifestyle? Because that lifestyle involves traveling. You'll be flying back and forth. So is it something that you're going to be able to afford? Can you manage it? Which brings me to my next point, which is to do with your source of income. So if you're considering moving back home, let's say on a permanent basis, or if you're going to be doing half and half, like I've already described, then you want to consider, how are you going to be getting your money? If you're someone who is retired by the time you return back home, then do you have a pension? Do you have enough savings? Do you have investments? What is your source of income? And also, this is the time when you may want to consider having a side hustle. Starting now, it is important to consider the affordability of that kind of lifestyle. How are you going to be managing in terms of money? Suppose you've already got your home, it's set up and everything, whether in both countries, but you also want money to maintain that kind of lifestyle, whether it's permanently in Zimbabwe or it's half and half. Do you have a source of income, or have you saved? Do you have a pension if you're going to be retired? So you want to think about money. Finances are important, especially if you're planning such a move, because going back to Zimbabwe is a costly move. There are all kinds of things that need to be put in place, because if you're going to be moving your stuff back home, then you want to think about things like shipping. I mean, it's a long process. As I already said, you don't wake up tomorrow and say, okay, this is it, I'm now going back to Zimbabwe. It's a process. It starts with you just brainstorming the idea of relocating, because mind you, moving, this thing that I'm talking about, relocating back to Zimbabwe, or deciding that, okay, I'm going to be half here, half there, has got psychological impact on you as a person. Because, for example, if like me, you've lived in the United Kingdom for more than 2 decades, that's a long time. You have formed relationships. You've become attached to that place, to that environment, because it is now your home. As much as you want to go back, it is also your home. That connection, that bond you've built over the years, those relationships you've created over the years, that is not something to be taken lightly. That is something that will affect you without a doubt. You may be excited to say, oh, I'm going now, I'm ready, maybe you've prepared everything. But guess what? When you get there, you're going to miss United Kingdom, you're going to miss United States, you're going to miss Canada, you're going to miss Australia. You're going to miss that place. So this is something to consider. Will you be able to cope with that? Are you prepared for the psychological consequences? Are you going to be able to withstand the mental stress, the physical stress even, that comes with such a move? Because mind you, you will need a period of readjusting, especially if you're planning to go back for good. You will need to reintegrate back into the community. It doesn't matter whether you were born in Zimbabwe, but the fact that you were living in another country for so long means that now you're going to experience what we call reverse culture shock. I mean, this is different from going back to Zimbabwe, staying for a month, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's different, because if you're going there to stay for 6 months or permanently, this is a different ball game. Because as I said, you will need to find a way to make money. You will need to adjust to how things are done in Zimbabwe, because things have changed a lot over the years. If you came 20, 30 years ago, clearly things will no longer be the same for you when you go back to Zimbabwe or Kenya, Nigeria, wherever you're going back, wherever your homeland is. Things will certainly be different. So yeah, definitely things are going to take time. Things will take time for you to become settled, for you to say, you know what, I think I have found my place now. I think I'm happy with my living arrangement. That will take time. So like I said, the planning, the time to start planning is now. It's never too early to plan. It's never too late to plan either. But better early than late, especially if you're planning to move back home. Another important thing as well, you may want to prepare yourself for or to really think about is your children. If you're a parent, how old are your children? When are you planning to go back? Do your kids want to go back with you? If they don't want to go back with you, then what kind of living arrangements are you going to make for your kids? How is that going to affect you as a parent, living away from your children? Are your children going to be able to be fine without you? Are they going to be able to live abroad without you? Have you prepared them enough? Because as a parent, you want to prepare your children for life, for real life, because it's a jungle out there. So you want to have that reassurance that even if you're not there, they'll be okay without you. As a parent, this is the goal, it's the dream for you to prepare your kids to such an extent that they become independent, to such an extent that you have confidence, you have peace of mind that, you know what, I have equipped them with the necessary skills they need to sustain themselves, to advocate for themselves, to stand up for themselves, to overcome adversity. They have the courage. I've prepared them to have courage, to have resilience. I mean, there are all kinds of things. You want that reassurance that, you know what, I prepared my children mentally, physically, emotionally, psychologically, in every possible way. You want that reassurance because as a parent, it's hard knowing that your kids are out there and you're not there to support them. But as we know with life, there will come a time when children must fly the nest. So how old are your children? Are they grown up enough? Do they need you? Are they going to be okay without you? What kind of living arrangements have you made for them? So all these are things to consider if you're planning to go back to your homeland one day. Now, if you want another insight, a different angle to this topic, then I would advise you to watch this video right here.